Okay, welcome everyone. We may as well get started for the evening. It looks like we've got a small group for tonight, so you're welcome to interact a bit more if you want to come off mute, ask questions, turn on your video if you want. I'm happy to chat as well. We'll keep a similar format as we have for the past 3 weeks. I think everyone's attended, but in case maybe someone's watching this after the fact, watching the recording, my name is Lisa Hoffart. I'm a registered psychologist and a mental performance consultant. I work with the Sport Medicine and Science Council of Saskatchewan. So this is our 4th webinar in a series of 4. We've got Anna joining us again tonight as well. So Anna, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Anna, and I'm a professional golfer. Currently, I'm coaching, but I did play on the Symetra Tour, which is formerly the Symetra Tour, which is now called the Epson Tour. I'm so happy to be able to share my tour playing experience with you guys in regards to stress and coping. And this is just such a super helpful topic. And looking through Lisa's slides, I'm really excited for you guys to see what she has to say. So I'm just going to let her step right in.
Sounds good. So one of the things that we've talked about over the last 3 weeks is how we apply these skills to golf and how it can really help to improve your performance. But I think one of the key things, especially with this topic, and we've talked about it over the last 3 weeks as well, is that so much of this can be applied day to day. And so, for example, we talked about thinking patterns and knowing that how we think day to day can affect how we golf and vice versa. How we think in golf can then transfer over into our day to day. And so, especially with stress, if we're feeling stressed in our day-to-day life, a lot of times we take that stress, tension, worry, anxiety onto the golf course. And like I said, vice versa, sometimes that stress from a golf game can filter back into day-to-day. So with this topic, it's really looking at how you experience stress generally, how you experience stress on the golf course, and then being able to start just exploring that. Again, going back to that very first topic we had in our first session, that self-awareness. Being able to start thinking about how you tend to experience stress. What are some of your early warning signs? Again, the better we can understand ourselves, the better we can start thinking about what do I need to do to manage this? What's helpful? What's not helpful? How can I take steps towards this? How can I grow day to day, but also as a golfer? And so in the spirit of that, we're going to start off with I think it's actually my second slide. So we're going to start off with just a quick equation that I pulled out of a book by Stelberg and Magnus called Peak Performance. I like to reference this equation because I think it's so helpful. A lot of times we think about stress as a negative thing. We think about stress as something that takes away, as something that we want to avoid. And what we're going to talk about today is how that's not always the case. Stress is, it can be a physical stress, it can be a mental stress. That results from demanding circumstances. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a negative thing, but we want to make sure that it's not becoming too much, that it's not loading up without us ever getting a break. That's where stress can become overbearing, overwhelming, and then, yes, turn into a negative and a more chronic situation. What we want to do is we want to look at how we can manage these periods of stress. So again, that physical load, that mental load with periods of rest. And so really being purposeful in terms of having those periods where we can rest, relax, regenerate, and again, really targeting that both mentally and physically. And we know that when we have those combinations of stress and rest, that's where we get growth. And again, that growth is that process of being able to develop, mature, and again, looking at that growth from a physical perspective, but also a mental perspective. And so even if we just take this principle and apply it to the gym, to lifting weights, we know that in terms of a typical weightlifting session, you're going to lift and you're going to take a break, and you're going to lift and you're going to take a break. And so whether that's breaks between the sets that you're doing in the gym, or whether it's breaks between days or alternating different parts of the body that you're working out. So you want to stress, you want to actually be able to lift those heavy weights, but then you need that rest and recovery time. And so same thing when we look at how we're managing periods of mental activation, being able to go into that situation and feel like you're mentally on, feeling like you're mentally tuned in, mentally focused. Again, that can be something that you're responding to a challenging situation, but then having that time afterwards, after you've been really dialed in, to just shut down, shut off, have that chance to regroup and regenerate. Because again, we know that's what's going to help us to grow. So We're going to keep this in mind. Again, the book was Peak Performance, Stelberg and Magnus. Lots of really interesting things that come out of this, but to simplify it in terms of our presentation, just keeping this equation in mind. So obviously stress plus rest equals growth. We need that combination of stress and rest, but also reminding ourselves that stress doesn't have to be a bad thing, especially when we're looking at it in moderation as something that we can control, as something that we're kind of going about in a purposeful way so that we can be able to feel like we're growing and taking those steps. Coming back though, I thought I was leading with this slide, but we had the equation first, is just a chance to check in. And so again, this self-awareness, but also just this time to pause and think about where you're at. And this isn't to share, this is just for you. Lots of different words. And again, they're a little bit blurry, sorry about that. Kind of scanning through them, looking at the words or the facial expression. Maybe there's a word up here that, or maybe there's a word that's not up here that you're feeling, and wanting to think about that for yourself. So again, just that chance to pause and bring yourself back to this moment. Okay, so again, I think those little check-ins are great. It can bring our attention back to how we're feeling right now. If we've been rushing through the evening and kind of flew into your chair and turned on your computer at last minute, maybe you're feeling pretty good, you had a good day, you felt productive. Again, recognizing that we can show up in a lot of different ways, recognizing how we're feeling right now, doing that scan, kind of checking in with your mind, checking in with your body, and recognizing sometimes where that comes from. So again, we're going to chat through a lot of that tonight in terms of where the stress response comes from, how that can be very natural, again, that it can be a helpful thing. But before we get into that, just to do an extension of this, I want you to pause and just jot this down for yourself. What are some things that maybe you're stressed about right now? And it doesn't have to be right now in this actual physical moment, but maybe there are things that are going on in your day-to-day, at work. Maybe there's something that's coming up later this week that you're feeling stressed about. Maybe you're applying this question to golf and starting to think about what are some things that maybe you're a bit worried about. So we've got the word stressed. You can also think about worried, nervous, anxious. Again, we can sometimes interchange some of those words. But just to get this initial check-in, we're going to do a bit of work with this as we move through the session tonight. So just for you, just jot things down. I'll give you a minute or two. Okay, so the purpose of this isn't to start thinking about all the things that are stressing us and feeling more stress in the moment. Maybe that was the response you had. And if that's the case, again, recognizing that's pretty natural. We're starting to think about things that maybe we're feeling a little bit worried or nervous about, things that are feeling overwhelming or that we don't quite have the right grasp on. But again, even just if those responses are coming up, just stopping and thinking, okay, what do I notice? What signs and symptoms are showing up for me right now? How do I know that I'm feeling stressed as I write this list? And so again, it's just having that check-in and doing that bit of awareness right in the moment. And so we talked about how stress plus rest equals growth. There are lots of different ways to define stress. One way can be that it's a physiological reaction, so our body's responding, but also an emotional reaction to something that's being perceived as a threat. And so when we perceive it as a threat, it feels like it's outside of our capacity to be able to deal with it based on the resources that we have available right now. And so that threat can also be something that's real, that's happening right in front of us, right around us, or something that we're imagining, that we're maybe projecting or thinking about, or wondering what if that happened. So again, breaking it down, we have stress as something that happens in our body and our mind. It's to perceived threat, so something that we think is challenging us, we think we don't have the resources to deal with right now. And that's something that can be either real, again, right in front of us, or that we're imagining it. And one of the key things that we're going to talk about tonight is how that perception of stress, that perception of the threat is going to start controlling our stress reaction. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look quickly at the stress response. I don't want to get into this in a ton of detail, but I just want to talk through essentially why we start to feel stressed. If we can think about why we feel stressed on the golf course, why we feel stressed at work or at school, why we feel stressed in different situations, we recognize this actually comes from a place where it helped us to survive ages and ages ago when people were living in caves. We recognize that it's actually trying to help us. It's trying to help us work through this challenge. We've just started to perceive it in a more negative way. So we have this stressful event. And so maybe it's needing to make a putt. Maybe it's needing to do a presentation at school or at work. Maybe it's you're out in the mountains and you're hiking and you see a bear on the trail. So those can all be stressful events. We can think about, is that a real event, like something that you're in right now in the moment? Or are you worrying about maybe seeing a bear? Are you worrying about needing to make your putt on a pressure shot? And so again, that can be a stressful event. We can then start to go into that evaluation. So if it's a putt, you're thinking, do I have the skills, the tools to make this shot? If you're seeing a bear on the mountain, you're thinking, okay, how close is this bear? Does it see me? Can I get away from it? Those kinds of things. So you're starting to evaluate it. If we evaluate that as something that we can deal with, that's actually one way we start to exit out of the stress response. We know that, okay, I've got the coping, I've got the things that I need to be able to deal with the situation. It's not that bad. We're not perceiving it as something that's too challenging. We're not going to go through the rest of the stress response. If we do evaluate it as, yeah, that bear is really close, it's looking at me, or you know what, this shot, I missed it last time, I'm worried I'm going to miss it this time, or I've been struggling with this all week, or perceiving that as maybe stressful, our body goes through a series of responses. It releases chemicals, it releases hormones. It helps our body essentially get ready to have a fight or flight response. We don't need to get too much into the chemicals and hormones, but it's a natural way that our body's trying to respond. Physically, our body starts to react in a number of different ways. So we might feel like we're really activated. We might feel like our heart is racing, that we're starting to breathe a bit harder. We might notice that we're starting to get sweaty. We might feel like we've got butterflies in our stomach. There can be a lot of different things that are happening there. Emotionally, we might feel like we're more irritated, more agitated, that it's hard to focus on one thing. We're trying to scan and take in a lot of information. It might feel like it's hard to focus. Again, there can be a lot of different things that come in as a result of how our body's changing in this moment. From there, we can also look at needing to choose a behavior. What's going to be most appropriate right here? So when you're trying to make the putt, what kind of reaction do you need to do? What kind of action do you need to choose? If you're doing that presentation, again, what kind of behavior do you want to have in that situation? If you see that bear, are you going to try to freeze up, try to make sure that it doesn't see you? Are you going to try to run away? You're going to try to fight it? Again, that behavioral response. Sometimes we take behavioral responses that are really helpful. We're able to maybe take that deep breath. We're able to talk to someone. We're able to act in a way that actually minimizes that stress. It's a helpful response. And so again, that can be another way where we start to exit out of this stress response. The behaviors that we've chosen actually help us to cope. It helps us to calm down. That's really helpful. Sometimes the behaviors don't help. So we're trying to make that putt, and maybe we're just scanning the crowd and looking at a bunch of different people. Maybe you're trying to talk to someone and you're just kind of perpetuating what's happening. Again, sometimes our behaviors aren't actually helpful, and then that cycle continues. So this is where we really want to look at a couple different things that we can have control over. And so this is where you can start challenging yourself a little bit. How am I evaluating this situation? Do I actually have tools and resources to deal with it? Yes or no? And then what tools and resources do I have to deal with it? So again, that evaluation can start changing our perception of it. We get to integrate some of those thinking patterns that we talked about previously. That can really start to make a big difference. The second piece, again, is looking at those behaviors. So once I already am feeling stressed, once I know I'm in the middle of this and my body's activated and my mind's not maybe thinking like I want it to, what kind of actions, what kinds of behaviors do I want to be taking? So again, recognizing those are two places where we do have a lot of control, where we're able to start kind of exiting out of this stress response. And so being able to target those things. Again, our bodies, when we were back as cave people, they wanted to keep us safe. We went through this response as a way to be able to fight off predators, as a way to be able to keep ourselves safe, be able to have that survival mechanism. So again, we're having these responses for a reason right now. And when we start to feel stressed, we recognize that it can actually provide a bit of a boost in our energy because of that adrenaline, because of that response, some of those chemicals that are being released. Stress, especially in some of those shorter terms, can help us to feel more productive and efficient. So anyone who's ever had to cram last minute for a test or had to hit a tight deadline, we know that sometimes feeling a bit of stress can help us just to really focus and be productive for that short period of time. Sometimes stress can actually help us to feel really excited and engaged. Our body's starting to be activated, and so our mind responds in a similar way, where we can actually really connect with what we're doing. And again, we recognize that those responses all happen when stress is happening on a shorter period, and it feels like it's something that is within our control. Again, we start to think of stress as something that's a negative when it feels like it's outside of our control for a long time. So we feel like the whole golf game is just one bad thing after another, or it's just a horrible week. And so we're not sleeping well, we're not coping, and things just feel like they're piling up. Again, stress over a long term can start to weaken our immune system. It can really cause fatigue. Again, on the golf course, that can make a big difference. It can interfere with our sleep patterns. So even though we're feeling exhausted, it's hard to sleep, it's hard to get that deep quality of sleep. We might feel like we're waking up a lot. And we know that stress can interfere with our mood. So we know that it can make us feel more irritable, more angry, more anxious, lots of different things that are coming up. And so again, recognizing that type of stress is typically chronic. So with some of those things, bringing this back specifically to golf, specifically to performance, again, just looking at that idea that some stress can be a good thing. This is a really good graphic to show that. And so this is called the inverted U hypothesis. One hypothesis about how stress activation can actually influence our performance. And so recognizing that each person's going to have their own unique area of optimum performance. And so starting to think about what that is for you, but being able to recognize that some amount of stress is actually going to increase that performance. And then once you get too stressed, too activated, too energized, you're going to tip over kind of that high edge, and you're going to start feeling that high stress, high anxiousness, those levels of unhappiness. And so again, this is just recognizing and really kind of emphasizing that some stress is a good thing. Stress can actually help our performance in a positive way. Is being able to recognize and start shifting that perception of it, and also looking at how you're trying to manage it so you feel a bit activated, but not too much. One of the easy ways to start checking in on this is to think, okay, on a scale from 1 to 10, how do I want to feel? How much kind of activation, how much energy do I want to feel? Am I a bit lower? Am I maybe a 2 or a 3? Am I a bit higher? Am I maybe a 7 or an 8? And again, there's no right or wrong here. It's just about what's best for your own performance. Recognizing that too little stress can be a bad thing too, because then we don't feel that engaged, we feel bored, we feel disconnected, and that's not going to help our performance either. So again, starting to think about what helps you to get to this area of optimum performance. What are some of the ways that you can integrate your self-awareness, some of your goals, some of your thinking patterns, maybe other mental skills and strategies, other physical things that you're doing to help get yourself ready to really help you go out and have that good performance. And then again, the second piece, as we've been highlighting, is recognizing that, again, stress plus rest equals growth. So having this chance to be able to go out, engage, and activate yourself, but then looking at, are there times during my golf game where I'm maybe integrating some rest, where I'm looking around at the trees, or where I'm chatting with someone that I'm golfing with, or just having those chances to kind of turn off and then turn back on. So that's one of the nice things about golf, is you can almost balance that stress plus rest throughout the game. And then also looking at maybe post game or within your week or after a tournament, how you're actually able to have those periods of rest as well. So again, something for you to be thinking about individually, because you want to think about what's going to be best for you and your own performance. Coming back to signs and symptoms of stress, we talked about this a little bit earlier. There's a lot on this slide. I'm not expecting you to take every single thing in. It's just essentially highlighting that we can start recognizing that we're stressed in a number of different ways. So sometimes we're going to feel stressed in terms of our mood. So some of those affective signs and symptoms, we might feel really anxious, really angry. We might feel guilty. We might feel helpless. Again, there's a lot of different things that can start coming up those ways. Behavioral, when we start to feel stressed, our behavior can change. And again, that's kind of that last part of that stress before we continue through the circle. Maybe we're noticing that we're feeling really restless, really agitated. Maybe we're feeling more aggressive than typical. We might notice changes in terms of our body where we've got like clenched fists or clenched teeth. Maybe we feel like we're crying, other things like that. So again, lots of different things that can come up behaviorally. Physiologically, again, recognizing that just through the ways that our body's responding with some of those chemicals and hormones that are released, we can have things like increased muscle tension, increased heart rate, increased feelings of pain or headaches. Sometimes it feels like we're a bit nauseous or we've got butterflies in our stomachs. So again, lots of different things that are coming up. With some of those cognitive signs and symptoms, again, this is how our thoughts are starting to come through. Again, kind of expanding on some of the self-talk that we went over last week, recognizing that sometimes we feel like our worries are starting to grow. We're starting to distort some of those thoughts or start to really exaggerate. Maybe we're getting stuck in some of the black and white thinking, or we've got the self-defeating statements that are coming up. Again, there can be lots of different things that happen here. Thoughts of failure might feel like they're dominating or really getting magnified. And then sometimes we have changes interpersonally where we start to feel like maybe we're really typically social or laid back, and we start to withdraw. We start to get really irritated over small things. Sometimes when we're feeling stressed, we kind of project outwards where we're thinking only about other people and not taking care of ourselves. Sometimes we get really argumentative. So again, lots of different things. This isn't an exclusive list, but as I went through it, maybe you started noticing some things that you experienced or some of your own warning signs. And so what I want you to do is just jot down a few different things that you start to notice when you get stressed. And if you can, try to identify some of those early warning signs, some of those first things that you're noticing. But you can also just think about, like, what is a generally stressful situation? How am I typically responding in that? Or what are some of the things that I notice? What are some of my signs and symptoms? So I'll give you a minute or two here just to write down your own things. Again, expanding that self-awareness about some of your stress signs and symptoms. Okay, so again, the purpose of this is to start increasing some of that self-awareness, start to build up some of those ideas about what are my own reactions when I start to feel stressed. And like I said, if you can start identifying what are some of the first things I notice when I get stressed. So what are some of the first things you notice when you get stressed on the golf course, when you get stressed at home, or when you get stressed at school or at work? Again, if we can start identifying some of those early signs and symptoms, we can start to essentially get into that stress cycle and start changing those perceptions early on. If the stress cycle keeps going and going and it's gone through several rounds before we actually realize that we're stressed, our body has that much more of a stress response already happening, and it can be more difficult to start calming ourselves down and intervening. So again, the earlier we can start noticing stress, especially stress that feels like it's overwhelming, the more quickly we can start to manage it so that it doesn't become too much, so it doesn't become overloaded. Again, recognizing that it's okay to feel a bit of stress, we just don't want it to feel like it's consuming us. And some people will notice that they've got kind of a range of symptoms. They might start to feel like, you know what, I get really frustrated. I know that I don't sleep well. I know that I tend to just get lots of headaches when I'm stressed. I know that I don't focus as well. And you know what, I'm just not going to be as chatty as I typically am. So you might see things from all those different categories. Some people really notice that their stress is maybe one or two of these. So maybe a lot of their stress is really physiological. So they're noticing stress in their body a lot. Maybe they're really noticing stress in terms of their mood, in terms of how they're feeling. So again, there's no right or wrong. It's just starting to notice for yourself, do you tend to have a range of stress symptoms, or do you tend to notice it in maybe one or two categories? So again, just another point about some of these different things. So what we're going to reflect on quickly before we get into me highlighting some strategies is just starting to think about what helps you to manage stress. And so I'll give you a minute. I'll give you a couple minutes to start thinking this through, things that maybe you're already doing. I'll get you to jot those down for yourself. We'll come back in a couple minutes. I've got a number of different things that we'll chat through, but just get you jotting this down for yourself to start. Okay, so anytime, again, we can start thinking about what we're already doing, it's helpful because then we know what habits are in place. The thing with this question is sometimes we're doing things to manage stress and they're really healthy. They are really kind of helpful in terms of some of that positive change or positive coping. Sometimes ways that we manage stress aren't actually that helpful. So it's not necessarily a healthy coping response. So sometimes managing stress is actually staying up really late and maybe you're reading or on your phone or doing something, but then it means that you're getting way less sleep. And so maybe that's not really actually a helpful strategy for you. Maybe something that helps you manage stress is eating or having a drink or something like that, and recognizing, you know what, that's actually not really what I want to be doing to manage this. And again, there's no judgment. It's just for you yourself thinking, is this a way that I want to be coping? Is this a way that I want to be managing this stress? Or is there something else that I'd like to maybe shift to as a way to replace it? So when you look at those strategies that you're already using, again, it's just trying to understand for yourself, is this actually reducing my stress? Is this something that's helpful for me? Is this a strategy that I want to continue doing? Or is there something that maybe I want to replace? And so that was a starting point. I've got a whole next slide where we're essentially going to look at a number of different ways to manage stress. And I want to spend some time here just to go over some of these different ones. Again, I don't think there's anything that's totally new or out of the ordinary here. It's to give you some reminders. It's to help you maybe practice these a little bit in session and to see if there's maybe any new ideas that you want to introduce or maybe reintroduce, maybe things that you used to do that you've gotten away from. And again, there's a lot of strategies on here. So the goal of this isn't to have you going through and trying to apply each and every one of these. Again, like everything we talk about, is getting you to have maybe one or two new things that you're wanting to focus on, or one or two new things that you can really be setting as a goal. And anything more starts to feel overwhelming, and that might lead to additional stress. So it's trying to set those realistic pieces and have those smaller starting points. Once maybe you've incorporated one or two, obviously feel free to add in another one or another couple. So we'll start kind of the top right, deep breathing. Again, this is something that when we start to get stressed, our breathing starts to get more rapid and it starts to get more shallow. So basically our body's trying to get air in, but it's not kind of that smooth, slow, rhythmic breathing that activates our parasympathetic response. And parasympathetic response is basically our relaxation response. So when we look at consciously slowing down our breathing and doing some of that deep breathing, it helps to activate our body's natural relaxation tendencies. And so it might seem like it's kind of easy one or like an overly stated one, but deep breathing can actually make a big difference in terms of calming our body down. It's really hard to consciously calm our heart rate down or slow our heart rate down. We know that heart rate activates and increases as well. Same thing with our breathing rate. It's obviously a lot easier to practice that deep breathing. So what you're going to do now, we're going to practice this. And one of the things that research is starting to show in terms of deep breathing is that we want to try to exhale for longer than we inhale. And so it could be, for example, inhaling for a count of 4. We want to hold it for a second or 2, and then we want to exhale for longer. So if you inhaled for 4, you want to exhale for 5 or 6. And again, that longer exhale, that's where we really start to activate that relaxation response, that parasympathetic system. So that's where we start to kind of just help our body even more to naturally respond. So I'm going to lead you through this. We'll just do it for a minute or so, but just to give you a chance to practice it right now, just get yourself into a comfortable position. Depending on where you're at, if you want to close your eyes, please go ahead. If you'd rather keep them open, that's fine. And so just want you to practice taking that long, slow, deep breath in, and do it kind of on your own time. You can hold it for a second. And then just that big exhale, again, trying to focus on breathing out for longer than you breathed in. And hold it for a second at the end, and then have that inhale. Again, kind of that long, slow, you hold it at the top, and then exhale, try to push all that air out of your body. So you continue doing that. So you can breathe in for 1, 2, 3, 4, hold it, 1, 2, exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and hold it. So again, you can do it in different ways. You can count it for yourself, but just getting into that slow breathing pattern, again, kind of focusing on having that exhale a little bit longer. And so that starts to get our breathing under control. It helps to circulate oxygen. Again, like I said, it helps to trigger that relaxation response. There are different ways to do this. You can also kind of pull up a bit of a graphic where it kind of, a line will move, and it kind of, you inhale on the top, and then you hold when it goes down the side of a box, called box breathing. You exhale when the line goes across the bottom. You hold it when it comes back up to the top of the box. So sometimes having a visual or a graphic like that, if you like it. Counting's easy, it's always accessible. But ultimately just trying to go with what feels, if it's a calm rhythm, feels relaxing for you. Again, just with that emphasis on having that exhale a little bit longer. So that's one starting point. Very kind of a physical response, a physical coping strategy. In terms of our muscle relaxation, again, another really physical, physiological coping strategy where we actually look at how's my muscle tension. We know that muscles tend to get increased tension when we're stressed. Again, it's a way to try to help us be able to have that increased response for fight or flight. But if we're just holding that muscle tension, it's not going to be helpful. Even if you think about swinging a golf club when you're really tense, it's probably not going to go as well as it is when you're relaxed and just performing like you typically would. And so there's a couple different ways to think this one through. In terms of muscle relaxation, sometimes it just feels like our whole body's tense. We're just holding tension, and that can be one way that our body responds. Sometimes we notice that we have specific body groups that get more tense. So for example, some people will clench their jaw. We talked earlier about headaches, neck tension, your shoulder up around your ears. Those can be different muscle groups that we notice are getting really tense. One of the examples earlier was like clenched fists. You might notice that your fists get clenched. You might feel like you're kind of clenching through your core, through your glutes. You might feel like you're clenching your toes. Again, it's just starting to recognize, do you tend to hold muscle tension in a certain area? And then being able to stretch it out, shake it out, try to kind of target relax that muscle. You can also do a scan from your head to your toes, where you're just thinking, how am I feeling? How's my body? You do that check-in. So kind of a body scan. You can also do kind of a progressive muscle relaxation. And essentially what you do is you start You can start at your head or at your toes. I typically start at toes when we're doing this. And you'd want to clench your toes. You hold that tension for 5 seconds, and then you relax. You kind of wiggle your toes out. And then you move up into your calves, into your quads if you want, and you try to clench those muscles, hold them tight. Again, 5 seconds, kind of feel that tension, then you release it. You can move into your glutes and your core, try to tense those, hold it for 5 seconds, and just notice what that tension feels like, and then release it. If you need to wiggle in your chair a little bit, you can. Moving up into your chest and your shoulders, your arms, again, just kind of tensing those muscles, making fists if you want, and then noticing how that feels, and again, releasing it. We want to be fairly cautious when we start to tense neck and face and jaw muscles, but again, you can do it just at any time we're starting to tense muscles, recognizing that we don't want to do it too hard and actually create a kind of a pull or an injury. But you can also then tense your jaw muscles, your neck muscles, again, just with caution here. You hold it again for about 5 seconds, and you can kind of just shake it out a little bit. So that's kind of a progression, and went through it pretty quickly, but the purpose of it is to tense those muscles, help them to feel some of that stress, help them to feel that kind of purposeful tension that you're putting into it. And then when you relax it, when you shake it out, letting go of some of the additional stress that was there before you actually started the process. The nice thing with this is that, say you do get tension in your shoulders, so that you do get tension in your fists, in your hands, you can do some of that spot relaxation on the golf course. You can do that body scan on the golf course and just notice before a shot or between shots, am I holding tension somewhere? Do I need to just kind of check in with that group, relax it before I take this next shot? So again, it's one that can be pretty quick, but that you can do a number of different places. So we've had a couple of kind of body targeted coping strategies or ways to manage stress. This next one, visualizing success. Again, if we think back to some of those signs and symptoms, we recognize that a lot of times our mood starts to change and our thoughts start to change. And sometimes we feel like we're focusing on the negatives. We get into that really black and white, everything's horrible, only thinking about our mistakes type of thinking. We feel like everything's going to be horrible from here on out. So being able to interrupt or kind of switch some of that thinking by actually starting to visualize our success. And so this could be going back and thinking about a previous shot that you made earlier in the game or earlier in the training session, visualizing that, rethinking about it, even thinking about your next shot and thinking about where you want it to land, how that shot's going to go. So being able to start interrupting some of those failure thoughts, some of the doubting thoughts that come along quite naturally with stress, visualizing success can be a really helpful way to start changing some of that perception. Start recognizing that, you know what, it doesn't have to be negative from here on out. It doesn't have to all be bad. Getting yourself into a different thinking pattern, kind of pulling in some of those things we talked about last week, can really start to your brain to start thinking differently. And again, we know that once our brain starts perceiving things differently, that can exit us out of that stress response too. Visualizing, always a good strategy when we're feeling stressed, using it as a way to get ourselves feeling more positive and more on track. In terms of mindfulness, I know there's tons of different ways to practice mindfulness. I know it's something that is getting more attention kind of in the day-to-day right now. With mindfulness, the way I like to talk about it is just bringing your attention back to what's happening right now. And so using your different senses as a way to check in. So being able to look around and say, okay, what are things that I see? And stopping and kind of naming maybe 5 things in your environment. Sometimes you want to look for a color. So maybe you're looking for red things in your environment, or maybe you're looking for blue things or green things. Again, just stopping and actually noticing what's around you. Then you can kind of pause and think, okay, are there things that I can hear? On the golf course, this can be pretty nice. Maybe you're noticing the leaves rustling in the wind, or maybe you're hearing another shot or another conversation, or maybe there's birds, or like, again, kind of noticing some of those things that are going on around you. Whenever I do this and I'm presenting, I go and I actually start noticing I can hear my computer whirring a little bit, kind of that gentle whir. And I haven't noticed it for the 40 minutes we've been on the call, but again, you're starting to shift and notice what other sounds are in your environment. It just connects you with right now. A lot of our stress is looking at things that have already happened, things that we're worried about happening. So when we practice this mindfulness back to this present moment, we start to feel like we're more in control. So we've looked at things that we can see, things that we can hear. Sometimes there might be things that we can taste or smell. Those maybe aren't as readily available, but we can check in using those things. And then also, what are things that I can feel or things that I can touch? So again, right here, right now, I've got my water bottle. It's cold. You can notice that it kind of feels smooth to the touch. I've also been drinking a warm cup of tea, so I can kind of reach out and feel the warmth from that. You could feel like the grip of your golf club, or you could bend down and touch the grass. Different things that you can be touching just to have some of those sensations. And so again, with mindfulness, the purpose is just using your senses to connect to the present moment. So again, visualizing success, mindfulness, those are a couple of things that help us to really feel like we're incorporating some of the more cognitive, more psychological aspects. Having a routine, this is a nice one because it can incorporate physical and psychological strategies, but the nice thing about routines is that they're predictable. Our brain and our body know what's going to happen, and they don't have to think things through too much, especially when we feel like we're stressed. Going back to something that feels comforting, that feeling like it's well thought out, that is familiar, that can be a way that helps us to manage stress just that way, because we know what's coming. And so that can be really comforting. We think about babies needing a bedtime routine. That can make a big difference to help them transition from day to night. It's important for adults too, in terms of bedtime routines, but then also thinking about, what are you doing before a game to get yourself ready? What are some of those routines that you like to do? What are some of your pre-shot routines? Again, really being purposeful with those as a way to obviously help you get ready, but also just to have that familiarity so that if you are feeling stressed, you can kind of reconnect with that routine and just know that you're going to be ready for what's coming. So routines can be really important. We talked about self-talk last week, coming up with different things that we can be doing or saying that are helpful. Again, in terms of this, it could be self-talk that's going to be kind of instructional. Oh, keep your elbow in, or thinking about your stance or your balance, those kinds of things. You can also have kind of helpful reminders. I can learn from my mistake. That wasn't a great shot, but I'm going to get the next one. So again, having some of those thoughts, those reminders, those mantras that you're going to say, you don't have to take away those negative thoughts, but it can just help to shift onto something that's going to feel more helpful, more constructive, more controllable. So again, lots of strategies that we talked about last week as a way to just get yourself thinking in a different way. In terms of managing stress, we know that it happens to our body physically, and we know that it happens psychologically. So we want to make sure that we're taking care of our body. And so this can be taking care of your body on the golf course in terms of having a snack, having water, being able to maybe feel like you're connecting socially, whatever it is that's helpful there, but also looking at ways that you can take care of your body and your mind outside of the course. So again, this kind of emphasizes the rest component of the stress plus rest equals growth. What are ways that you're disconnecting during the golf game? What are ways that you're able to just take care of your body, take care of your mind, have that kind of mini timeout before you re-engage? And then again, thinking about on a day-to-day basis, what are some of the things that you're doing to take care of your body, take care of your mind? Again, those can be really helpful. Maybe you like to have a bath once a week. Maybe you like to go to bed early. Maybe you're just calling someone to talk. Maybe you're able to do some stretching or go for a massage. Like again, lots of different ways, but just really highlighting that rest aspect here. Again, kind of in line with that rest, taking a break. And so recognizing when you need to be pushing through, when you're managing that stress and kind of in that period of challenge, and knowing that it's helpful, but also knowing when you need to take that step back and being able to do something fun, do something relaxing, kind of having that time off, recognizing that we don't need to be pushing all the time, that having those breaks can make a big difference too. And then the last one, again, we know mistakes happen, but just sometimes reminding ourselves that no one's perfect. Everyone's going to make mistakes. Everyone's going to have challenging things that we wish we dealt with differently. But being able to have that reminder, have that check-in sometimes helps us to be able to let go of some of that stress, or just perceive some of that stress in a different perspective. So I think those are a number of different strategies, again, highlighting them physically, emotionally, psychologically, But this is where I want Anna to jump in. I know she's got a wealth of experience in terms of how she's managed stress with golf and with day to day. So we'll let her chat about this for a little while.
Hello, everyone. Just to reiterate, Lisa really knows what she's talking about. I really hope you were taking notes today. And if you didn't make it to the very first session of awareness, watch that one and then come back to this one and take notes, because once you know how to be aware, you can actually manage the stress and everything that you're feeling. So because everything with stress management is very personal, I'm going to kind of go through how I do it. And then this is going to be a little bit more interactive than some of the other talks that I've had. So I'm going to go through what I do. And then what I want you to do is ask any questions in the chat box. You may not have questions, but the more questions that you ask, the more into your golf game I can get. So my experience is playing professionally. So, a lot of the things that I used to do were very routine oriented. And it might be a little bit different because my routine was golf was my job and my personal life was my personal life. But I like to talk about them separately and together at the same time, because it's important to know what triggers you have when you're golfing that make you stressed, or what your signs are on the golf course. And it's also good to know what your triggers are in your life and also what your signs are in your life. And then sometimes they overlap and sometimes they don't. So it's really good to be aware of both your personal side and like on the golf course. And as a professional golfer, that was extremely important for me. And being able to mesh them together really made me a better player. But as amateur golfers and competitive golfers, it's kind of a different side. So that's why I want you to ask. I'm really going to encourage you to ask questions. So I'll go through everything that I do and what I kind of struggle with. And I'll be very personal, because I think if I can be honest with myself, with you guys about what stresses me out or what my triggers are or what my signs are, then I'm hoping you can be honest with me and we can really dig into, some questions you have for on-course stress management or after your golf game or pre-golf game stress management. So I'm going to send a little chart here in the chat, and then I'll show it to you guys at the end, but I want you to be able to have it. Just, you know what? I'll show it at the end and then you guys can screenshot it. It won't quite load in there, but that's okay. So when I'm on the golf course and I am a little bit stressed, my shoulders tend to go up. Even my abdominal muscles, they get really tight. So as soon as I notice that my shoulder is a little bit tight, or I'm getting a little bit stiff this way and I'm having trouble just kind of walking comfortably, I know that I'm a little bit stressed, and immediately I'll take 3 deep breaths. And you just feel so much better. Even one makes a difference, but I make sure to do a full 3 deep breaths. And even if they're just deep on my own, quickly, or, Lisa's technique of 4 in, hold it for 2, 5 out. I actually do that quite often outside of the golf course. And if I'm feeling really stressed on the course, or if I'm really feeling the pressure of a situation, I will hold it, or I'll exhale for 8 counts instead of 5, to really be aware of what I'm feeling. My jaw tends to get really tight, and I definitely noticed that one. That one is a tough one to get used to. But those are kind of my physical signs that I know that I'm getting a little bit stressed. But my mental signs are if I'm unable to focus, or, things are distracting me. I've started my pre-shot routine and, oh, there's a bug. Or, wow, that person just moved. But, if I'm really into my routine, I probably wouldn't notice those things. So if I become a little bit distracted or unmotivated, then I know that I'm a little bit stressed, and maybe it's time to take a little bit of extra time in my pre-round routine or my nightly routine before a golf round to really have some me time. There are a few things that I like to do on the course just to kind of maintain a relaxed, chill mindset, because it is really important to kind of keep like a low and keep like even keel stress level. Like Lisa said, there's a little bit of stress that's good and a lot of stress that's not so good, but there is like a happy medium. And sometimes I find that I can be, way up here, and then sometimes I'm way down here, and it could be for completely different reasons or for the same reasons. And that's really what awareness kind of brings into perspective. So during my round, no matter what, if I'm not feeling stressed, if I am feeling stressed, these are some of the things that I will always do just to continue to prevent and help me stay in a relaxed state of mind and comfortable, relaxed body feeling as well. I'll always make sure to have at least one sip of water on every single hole, right before I hit my tee shot or right after my tee shot. Before I leave the teeing area, I will always have a sip of water. I always make sure to have a snack every 3 holes. I know that if I don't eat on the golf course, I start to get unfocused. And it's another way just to kind of bring yourself back to the present moment. Like Lisa was saying, it's good to, visualize, things that you see or point them out. And for me, having a snack every 3 holes really brings me into my moment of, oh man, like I'm enjoying the snack. What am I going to have as my snack tomorrow? Or what am I going to have for supper tonight? I'm really liking this granola, or this apple's really good. Maybe I'll make a crisp later this week because, I'm craving something sweet. And, as random as some of these things may be, they're a nice way to kind of get off of the golf course and into my own head in a relaxed fashion. Sometimes I'll just ask my playing partners, about their week, or, what are they doing later tonight for supper? When I was on tour and I would play with, different people, I wouldn't always know them either, which might be a little bit different from, a lot of you guys. And if you play competitions, you might play with new people. If you play with your friends all the time, it's different. But a lot of times I would play with people I didn't know. So I would always ask them, where they're from. And I'd really enjoy getting to know just like the surface details of these interesting people that I get to play with. Having a routine before every shot and also before my round. Oh my goodness, that just makes everything so much easier. Routine is everything, because as soon as you get stressed, you kind of don't know what to do. But if you already have a routine in place that, you look down the line, you draw a line from the golf hole to the target, you do your practice swing, you feel loose, whatever your practice swing's purpose is. On that note, practice swings should have a purpose, please. But if you know what to do, if your body knows what to do, it will kind of bring your mind back into a comfortable state so that you can kind of get back into your shot and relax. Another thing that I like to do, and this is not necessarily something I would do on the golf course, but this was something I would do if I'm noticing that I'm feeling a little bit anxious or stressed about a certain shot or something that might, like a certain hole. Maybe there's a really difficult hole on the golf course that I'm like kind of feeling anxious about. But if it's 5 holes away, I will bring myself into the present moment. But when it comes to that hole, as I'm walking up to the tee, I will think of what motivates me. And this is something I know prior to the round. This is more of a planned thing. I know that when I get stressed and I'm worried about a certain shot or a certain hole, I like to think of both the best and worst case scenarios. And then I ask myself, what's the worst that can happen from both of those? What's the best that can happen? Because if you can be mentally prepared for the best case scenario and also the worst case scenario, then everything in the middle, it doesn't really matter. But it does help knowing if you're more motivated or calmed by thinking of your best case scenario or your worst case scenario. For me, I like both. Some people like thinking of the worst case scenario because they know it's the worst thing that could happen. And, they might not worry about it because they're like, oh, well, like, that's definitely not going to happen. And then they can relax. And then when they get into their routine, they will know, okay, here's my target. This is what I'm doing. But if you kind of avoid your worst case scenario or avoid your best case scenario out of fear of it being bad or fear of succeeding, which is a huge thing that most people don't always, think about, it can really help you be prepared for whatever happens. And then you kind of get to relax once you've already thought about these things, because you've now already gone through them in your head. And then when it happens in real life, it's not as big of a deal. So next here, does anyone have any questions? I don't have any questions yet, but I would really like to see some in there because this is more of a personal thing. I do have one more little section to talk about, and then we'll go over some questions if there are any. So those are the things I do on the golf course when I'm stressed or, you know, just playing. But things that I like to do in my personal life for stress management, or even just if I'm noticing that I'm feeling a little bit stressed, is I will first of all ask myself if I've eaten a vegetable today. And it seems kind of silly, did I eat a vegetable today? But if you haven't had any nutrition and you forgot to eat breakfast, and then all of a sudden you're, you know, just eating an apple, or, you know, you ate fast food for lunch and it's the only thing you've eaten all day, that could be a huge indicator that you are not taking care of yourself. And if you're not planning breakfast or planning to drink enough water, or you didn't have, you know, any nutrients that day, that does affect how your body functions and how your brain will respond to stress. Because you might respond worse to stress when you aren't getting the nutrients that your body and your brain need. A lot of times I'll make a list of things that were bothering me, and then I will write a list of the things I'm grateful for, so that I can kind of get all the pros and cons of how I'm feeling. Journaling is a big thing that really helps if you're able to do it consistently, even if it's once a week, once a month, just kind of having a check-in with yourself. And if you don't really know what to write, you can always just, you know, Google prompts, you know, Google prompts for when I'm stressed, Google prompts for, you know, when I'm happy, what I'm grateful for. There are so many fun things you can find in questioning yourself. And then you get to know yourself, and it's another way to be aware. And then one of the biggest things that I actually think is probably the most important one for me that I realized is venting to a friend. If I have a friend that is free and available, and I am able to chat with them, I always ask myself, am I talking to them to vent, or am I still complaining about something that I'm not over yet? Finding the difference between venting and complaining can really, it's really a launch pad for success or getting through the situation if you're venting. But if you're complaining, it's kind of a launch pad, you know, because your mental game is just going way down and down and down. So this is where I like to journal. But if you're not a journaling person and you have someone who's able to listen to you for a little bit, ask yourself if you're venting or if you're complaining. Does anyone resonate with that? Yes, no? Okay. And then one thing that not a lot of people consider too is talking to a professional is so helpful. I used to speak with a sports psychologist. I worked with quite a few when I was in college as an amateur and a junior and as a professional. And it's a really big help to have someone talk about the things that I need to work on in my golf game. But it was also really good that my mental coach at the time when I was playing professionally pointed out that I also needed to speak about things in my personal life. And it was whether it was with him or with, you know, a counselor or psychologist specifically, being able to process what was going on in my personal life really helped my golf game. Now, it might be a little bit different for you guys since you're playing amateur golf and competitive golf. But for me, that was a really big thing because my golf life and my personal life were very different. And when I finally merged them together, that was really when I started playing well, because I was looking at myself as a whole and not as a golfer and not as like a worker or not as a person. You know, when you think of yourself in different slots, sometimes that can be beneficial, but sometimes you miss things if you're not able to look at each of your personas or each of your situations and really see them individually and be able to mesh them together. Being able to see yourself as a whole can really bring together your golf game if you can be honest with yourself. But those are kind of the main things that I like to do. But there's lots of different things that you can figure out on your own. This is where self-awareness comes in. So my key points would be being able to talk to a friend and understand whether you're venting or complaining. Big difference. Being able to meditate or find some time to just be present, whether it's listening to a song or, washing dishes. Just be aware of what you're physically doing and be present. And then the last thing that I haven't mentioned yet that Lisa mentioned, which I just love, schedule in some time for yourself. And this is for maintaining a stress-free life, or a nice stress level throughout your life and your golf as you're playing. When I get stressed, I schedule way too many things and I don't give myself time to, wake up in the mornings. I'm always very rushed. So being able to schedule an hour or two before I have to leave the house or before I have anything to do makes a really big difference in my day, and making sure that I actually sit down and journal. Or for me, my favorite thing to do is go for a walk with my dog. It's something super simple, but it really does bring me happiness, and it gets me outside. It gets me aware of my dog. It really makes me grateful for the life that I'm living, and I get to think about it. So those are some of the things that I really like to do in my golf game and also in my personal life. So this one was a little bit more personal, and I hope that me being honest with you guys is helpful for you to be able to be honest with yourself and be able to figure out what works for you. All right, I'm done.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Anna. It's always helpful to hear things that you're doing on the golf course, recognizing that different people have different strategies, but knowing that what you did might help someone, or that they might be able to take some strategies out of that. One of the things,
and then,
yeah,
sorry, I forgot. I'm going to send in that chat here. My stress and coping chart. These are my questions that I kind of go through and ask myself. Sorry, I totally forgot about that at the end. So I'll send that in the chat.
Okay.
And for those of you that are online, I'll just quickly share my screen.
1 second.
Sorry, Lisa, I cut you off there. I just realized that I forgot to show that.
Yeah, all good.
Okay, there we go. All right, so can everyone see this chart here? Hopefully. So I actually have drawn out this chart because these are things that I go through. I don't necessarily have a chart, but I do have these things written down in my planner, actually. This is a really good reminder for my personal life, what kind of bothers me. And it's nice to have it written down because sometimes we forget. But in my golf bag, I have a notebook, and I will also keep all my golf notes in there, as well as these questions, so that when I am feeling a little bit iffy and I'm kind of unsure of what to do, if I didn't have a routine, or if it's a new stress that I don't know how to handle it, sometimes I will read that and then I'll have an idea and I'll feel a little bit more relaxed on how to handle the situation or whatever comes my way. So if you are watching this, then you can screenshot it. But if you're in the Zoom call, then I will attach it in the chat so that you can have it. All right.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to come back to this. One of the things that Anna said that I think is really helpful is recognizing that we are talking about stress and anxiety as being something that is normal, that can be helpful, that we want to be able to manage, but also recognizing that stress, anxiety, burnout are all very real things and can get to a point where it becomes excessive and chronic and very unproductive. And so just recognizing that if these things are happening on an ongoing basis, where it feels like it's excessive, where it feels like it's difficult to control, where it feels like it's interrupting with your day-to-day, and it's not normal for you, I would really encourage you to reach out to someone. So whether it's kind of performance focused, or someone that's just going to help you with your day-to-day, or counseling or psychology, just emphasizing that that can be a really helpful thing, and that sometimes we do need some of that extra support. So that being said, just wanted to finish off with the head and the heart, a quick little cartoon to remind us that sometimes things don't always go our way. Sometimes things come up that are maybe unavoidable or unexpected, but that's where we can use the stress and coping mechanisms that we've talked about. Just to summarize quickly, recognizing that stress plus rest equals growth, that we want to have those combinations, thinking about what's going to be best in terms of helping yourself have some of that helpful stress, but also balancing that out. Recognizing that stress is very natural, it can be very helpful. We just want to make sure that it doesn't last for too long or get too excessive. A big part of what we wanted to come out of tonight with is a bit of that understanding and that increased self-awareness of your tendencies, the thinking patterns that sometimes contribute to some of those stress responses, and some coping strategies that you're already using that are helpful, but also maybe a few new ideas about things that you can implement as a way to manage your stress more effectively. So as always, happy to answer questions. I will put my email address in the chat. Happy to stay on for a little bit longer as well, but recognizing we've gone a few minutes over tonight. So if you're needing to jump off, just wanted to say thank you everyone for joining tonight. Thank you for joining for the past 4 weeks to have these sessions with us. And if you want to put your your email address in the chat as well. We will hang on for a couple minutes if there are questions, but otherwise, thanks everyone and have a great night.